First of all, you don't know me.
We're all about that high school drama girl, all about them high school queens. We'll take you for a ride in our comic girl, drama girl, cheering for the right team. Drama queens, smart girl, rough girl, fashion but you're tough girl. You could sit with us, girl. Drama queens, drama queens, drama queens, drama queens, drama queens. Hi everyone, Season 3, Episode 17, Who Will Survive and What Will Be Left of Them? Air date March 29th, 2006. Wow, girls. We knew we were getting into the grief of it all. The synopsis here is that everyone is emotionally dealing with the tragedy through the 5 stages of grief. I kind of liked that they did this, the flashes of like anger, denial. Dan has visions of a young Keith. Lucas feels it's his fault. Keith is dead. Nathan and Haley move back into the apartment while Brooke moves in with Peyton. Plus, we find out who released the time capsule.
Mm-hmm. All I have to say is thank you so much, Joy, you and James, for providing the only happiness and levity in this fucking episode.
Right?
God, it's just
I
it's
love
such
that.
a sad fallout, and Nathan and Haley are so sweet.
Yeah, we needed to see there was some healing. I mean, I loved the healing at the end, which we'll get to, but we needed some in the midst of everyone else in turmoil, Nathan and Haley finding that healing in each other and the comfort in being grateful for what they have right there in their arms. That was really beautiful.
And I loved that, you know, when we're experiencing that scene where they're in bed after Keith's funeral at the cemetery and then everyone's on the way to Karen's. I loved that to all the questions that have been plaguing them for this whole season, he's so quick to answer. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And he explains how it was all clarified for him in that awful moment.
Yeah.
And it's such a universally true human thing that when you are in a moment of strife or struggle or sadness or whatever, when something seismic happens, it recalibrates everything, and it puts things in perspective in such a clear way, and it turns your boogeymen into like individual little problems, and you realize how small everything is. And I loved that there was someone in our story who was able to have that silver lining moment out of the worst, hardest episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, they were in the room with Jimmy. Yeah. I mean, it's not like these are people on the exterior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Haley and Nathan were in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you said that, Sophia, because there was a part of me, as grateful as I was to see that, I was also a little bit like, is it kind of insensitive? Are we missing something here? But, everybody does deal with grief in different ways. And the fact that someone could find healing out of a place of grief, it is human and it's okay.
Yeah. I will say, it was funny. I didn't think I would, not funny, it's odd. I didn't think I would share this. I thought about it a lot last week when we watched the shooting episode. But I remember going through a loss in my family. And it was a loss because of an incidence of gun violence. Mm-hmm. And our family was in different states when it happened, and everyone spent all day on the phone, just all the family calling everybody. I mean, hours of just like tears and sobbing. And I mean, it's fucking tragedy.
Yeah.
And I had plans that night with 2 friends. And I said, I'm not going. There's no way. And, it was 10 o'clock at night or whatever in LA. There was no getting to another state. There was no flying anywhere. And my friends came over here and were like, put your fucking dress on. There is nothing you can do. And we are not going to let you sit in this house and cry all night. And my friends, it's so crazy. My friends took me dancing.
Yeah.
And they were like, you are going to celebrate. We are going to celebrate harder tonight than we have celebrated in recent memory, because we better be grateful that we can. And I remember this like moment. It felt like a movie where I almost felt like everything went into slow motion. And I was on the dance floor and I was looking at one of my girlfriends, and we looked over at her boyfriend, and we were all just like sweating and laughing. And I started crying. And it was like, if you do not take the incredible gift of being alive on this planet in this moment and like get every ounce of gorgeousness out of it. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
And I really feel like Nathan and Haley in this episode were the reminder of that. You guys were the ones that were like, yes, feel your grief, feel your feelings, do the sadness, the depression, the anger, the denial, all of it. Every one of those title cards that we got in every act. But you better take advantage of being alive and being in love for the ones who can't.
Soak it up. Soak it up.
Well, Nathan and Haley,
such a lesson.
They're the entry point for it. And then it grows into this party that involves the whole school. And you guys know, I mean, how many people have died in my world in the last year? You know, it has been a relentless marathon of loss. And I think if I had seen this episode as a younger person, I would have had that gut check that you had, Joy, of like, ooh, insensitive? Is this cringy? I don't know if this is cringy. And as an adult, I agree wholeheartedly with you guys. If you guys aren't pleasure monsters out there and you're not out like actively searching for fun and joy and interaction and peace and like all of that,
The most fulfilling life you could possibly have.
go nuts. Just go nuts.
Yeah.
Don't worry about tacky. Go out, party. Honestly,
Well, I love that about that's it. That's the high school part. That's the party in the hallway is the tacky element. It's like, and the fact that honestly, Sophia, it's so inspiring that your friends would show up at your house in that moment and be willing to risk you being like, how
disgusted.
How dare you? How dare you not honor my grief right now? They were willing to risk that scary moment in order to take the chance to give you what they thought you really needed, which turned out to be the thing that you needed.
Oh, and you know what it taught me? It taught me that like the vacuum that your grief can create, the chasm that a loss can open has to be filled with something. And it's balance. If you spend all day doing this, spend all night doing that, whatever it is. And I love that they gave Rachel that moment to say, who are you to judge how people heal? Everyone's together. People need this. Go in any room here and have any experience you want, but people need to be together. And that's what it is for people to say, I don't know if this is what you need, but what I do know is that I'm going to come hold you. What I do know is that you've been in sadness and I'm going to pour joy into you. I'm going to pour love into you. And it's like, it's not perfect. And yeah, you're right, Hill. It might be like all these kids in the high school might be tacky, but they're together.
Yeah.
And that's worth something.
They're doing it. They're just taking the risk and jumping. It's like, just take the leap.
Yeah, give me tacky. That's
no reason to hold back.
No. This episode was really difficult to watch because the subject matter is so serious. And I do think there were like really shining elements to this episode. You know, those interactions in particular, the Nathan and Haley of it all, the Brooke throwing the party, seemingly like teamed up with Rachel and Mouth, you know, like that trifecta is great. That has been a love triangle of its own for the last few episodes. And so to see everybody together felt really, really nice. There was some stuff, you know, that is still like weird. Like the Pete Wentz of it all.
Weird to
the
you?
Pete Wentz of it all.
The Pete Wentz.
And also just kind of like, we didn't talk about it in the last episode, but I hated so much of Peyton's dialogue when we were in the library. But because the subject matter was so serious, it was just like, don't ask questions, just go, 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 go. Yeah. And I like that we got to resolve that in this episode by Lucas giving Peyton shit in the library. That was helpful for me. That was really helpful. Yeah. It was like, can we make fun of this now? We're going to make fun of this? Thank you. Because
I also loved at the end of that conversation, you could not get out of there fast enough. It was so funny. Like once you guys had resolved, it was like, yeah, okay, we're good. So we're good. Okay, goodbye.
It felt really real though.
It did. That's what I loved about it.
I remember this episode. Do you guys remember filming this one? Of all the ones we've watched in the recent months, I have like physical memories of this.
Me too. Yeah. Why is that?
We were traumatized.
That's so interesting.
Why.
Must have been.
Well, and we were saying it when we watched it, but that scene, Hill, of you and I on Peyton's porch at the end.
Oh my God.
I mean, visceral. And what I loved is, you know, when we were doing it, and you were jumping on my back. Like that just happened. You were like, don't fall. Because you didn't want me to drop us both on our faces.
Well, okay, because so this episode was really the last few episodes, it's just like hard stuff. And almost like life imitating art. When Sophia and I shot that scene on Peyton's front porch, where it had been awkward between Brooke and Peyton, and like it was weird and everything felt segmented, and we're trying to put everything back together. We shot that at like 4:00 in the morning, and it had a crazy long day. And I'd been drinking before we shot that scene and while we were shooting that scene. And so when Brooke came up and Peyton's just like, baby, you're here. Oh my God, I'm so happy. Like I was legitimately happy to see Sophia because I didn't get to see her the whole last episode. And then when she's just like, I'm sorry. And Peyton's like, it doesn't matter. I don't know, it just felt real. That celebratory thing that the kids are doing in the school of just trying to cope and get through the moment is, I think, what I was trying to do. Because we also know season 3 is when things started to go really sideways behind the scenes. And so it just, I don't know, the life and art crossing over in this episode was very strong for me. I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but.
I felt it. I felt all those visceral, Matt. Maybe it's also because we were dealing with such sort of like esoteric top. It was like big topics. It was beyond just like boys and girls and hurt feelings and, you know, all of the dastardly villains. And I mean, this was really, we're dealing with life issues. What do you do with the concept of justice? What do you do with the concept of life after death, or death being the end, or, you know, soaking up what you have now? Where do souls go? What the justice of it all was a major theme in this whole thing. What does Lucas do? You know, he demands justice, as he should, and yet there's a part of him that's hugely made up of compassion. Where do you put that? It's so hard to compartmentalize all these things. And I mean, I don't know, maybe for me, because we were juggling so many big, deep issues, maybe that's why I just remember these scenes, like filming these scenes more, because it was, it's more deeply rooted into my soul than a lot of the other material that we did.
Well, what do you remember? Because it was cold as hell. You can see Sophia and my breath outside. You can see, like, when they were out on the quad, you could see everybody's breath. And then you're in sprinklers with your shoes off.
They always put us in rain and cold.
Why?
I remember that football field.
Why could it never rain when it was hot out?
I
Couldn't
know,
we ever have shot a hurricane in the summertime? Hello?
Please, for God's sake. No, that was some football field they sent us out on. And somebody lost a bet that night. Because I know, Sophia, they used to bet on between you and I who was going to get to set last. But this night there was some bet, because it was obviously just me and James. And James is always like the first to set before everybody. And
he never leaves set.
I know, but I stopped at Crafty, I guess, because on my way back, I stopped at Crafty to get a cup of tea. And that's why I remember it was cold, and I remember being out there. And I remember stopping for my cup of tea on the way in, and I heard Lassiter, one of our PAs, on her walk, and she's like, she stopped at Crafty. She stopped for tea over, you know, and then somebody was like, yes, I won. It was just dumb shit like that. I don't know why I remember. And then going out on that field and getting wet, you know. And then I remember being in bed. I remember having those scenes. I remembered the feeling of James coming up behind me when I was, you know, my makeup was off, and I was like, can you unzip me?
In the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, in the very beginning, just like these comfort moments, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. Sophia, do you have a visceral memory of this episode at all?
Yeah.
She remembers those cute little kicky boots she had on. That little outfit.
I know, and your Barbarella hairstyle.
Oh my God, right? I did feel like Barbarella at that party, which was also weird. But I loved, like, I love looking back at some of the early Brooke moments, because I remember, you know, the earnestness of wanting to get it right as an actor, and also for her, thinking like, you know, she's trying to do this thing and throw this party, and, you know, Brooke would probably normally wear like some bright sparkly dress, and she's going to be Brooke at a party, but she's going to wear black, you know, the attempts at teenage balance. And yeah, I remember coming to the porch that night at Peyton's house.
Yeah.
I remember that conversation. I remember that sort of visceral feeling of having to be vulnerable in a way you don't want to be, but it's your best friend and you have to be. You know, and me having to cry and you being in like such a joyful mood and like being a little tipsy and laughing. And like, it was all just very genuine and honest. And I do think it's because we were dealing with these big questions. And to your point, Hilarie, things were going sideways for so many of us behind the scenes at this point. And it was a real moment where, as young women, we all experienced in our own ways a simultaneous loss of innocence.
Yeah.
Like big things that we considered to be true broke for all of us.
Oof, ain't that the truth?
And they were breaking for these characters, and it like gave us a place to put it, but we didn't know where to put our feelings, really. So
no,
I just remember how it like the feeling I have now is that it was sensational, and I don't mean amazing, and I mean like the sensations of all of it were so heightened, and I will say the thing that I'd forgotten but that hit me like a ton of bricks was when we ran up into Peyton's room. Larry's building the shelves, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's where they came from!"
I love that dude so much.
Building the shelves.
That's sweet.
Great. You're dead on, man. That was, yeah, because I had just gotten married, and it was a disaster right away.
Yeah,
and I was.
You don't say.
and I was such a wreck in my personal life. I mean, it was really a disaster. And the only place I found solace in that time was at work. Yeah. I would come to work, and I was maybe that's another reason why these scenes started feeling so visceral. These episodes that we're watching now, especially this one, is that it's these ideals, these themes, these big things that we had planned and thought of in our lives all of a sudden came crashing down in all different spaces all at once. And all we really had was each other.
You know
and we didn't even know how to take advantage of that.
No.
That's what I'm realizing in this moment as you say that, Joy, is that we were all having these really parallel experiences, and we were so scared to admit we'd messed up.
Oh,
girl.
Yes.
Like the three of us went through such perfectionist phases.
Yeah.
We were so scared
give...
to admit that we'd picked the wrong people, that the relationships weren't healthy.
We trusted the wrong people.
That we trusted the wrong people, and the people who we thought were our mentors were taking advantage of us. Like, there was so much going on. And I think it's part of the reason that the relationships feel so true in season 3. Because it was the only place we had catharsis. Because think about how many more years it took us, you guys, to tell each other the truth. To be like, oh my God, I was really having a hard time. Oh my God, I was struggling here. Oh my God, this is when I knew that this was bad. This is when I knew I had to get out. This is when I knew I needed help. Whatever it was. It took us like 3 more years.
Yeah.
So we went through this chasm where it was like our scenes were our therapy almost, I'm realizing.
Well, it was practice.
Holy hell.
It feels like practice.
I've not ever thought about that before.
You know, I don't know about you guys, but by the time we shot this episode, we're like, 5-6 months into our shooting season? We probably shot this in January or February. We usually start in like August, late July. And the subject matter of this season, it's like Haley's had to grovel the whole time, is just finally like getting some comfort. Brooke has gone through it with Lucas, like, don't you do it. Don't you break my heart. You know, don't make me cry again. We're all crying about Peyton, dead moms, you name it. She gets shot, all the things. I was exhausted.
Yes.
And the scene with Brooke resonates so much with me. And then the scene with you two in the apartment resonated so much because it just felt like a release. Like having a couple drinks and then just like loving on someone and being like, God, it's just good to be with you. Felt so nice and real. And that blurriness between like, what is Sophia and Hilarie and what is Brooke and Peyton? what is Brooke and Haley and what is Sophia and Joy. Like that blurriness, I think, is what kept it alive for me. You know, we had, like you said, we had 3 more years of doing this, and we had been acting our relationships out on screen. But this is when it started to feel really like, I don't want to say confusing, but it was confusing because it was like real. It was like,
well,
I know Sophia's not going to like grab my boob. Do you know what I mean? Like there are certain like safety nets you have with the other women at work. And so I knew that if we were just together, we were okay.
We were going to be okay. And there's also something, I think, to that point of how tired we were.
Mm-hmm.
The material was exhausting, and that loss of innocence was exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't necessarily have the wherewithal or the energy to then commune about how exhausting it was. Like we were in survival mode.
No.
So the way we were able to commune with each other sometimes was in those scenes.
In the work.
That felt so honest. And I could see you, but you didn't have to say it. And you could see me, and I didn't have to say it. But we'd see it. And it was just, it was like enough soul fuel to keep us all going.
Well, this was so scary because they killed Craig. Like if they could kill Craig off, none of us were safe. You know, that was a very jarring moment.
Yeah. This is really where it's like, man, actors are fucked up. Because this is the kind of thing that, like, in normal life, you would have adults around you who would be like, honey, you need to go talk to a therapist. Honey, you need to go find your girlfriends and get your best ones together and go have a cocktail and just let it all out. But instead, we were bottling everything up and using our work to feel our emotions and have a relationship with each other. That's so messed up, you guys.
Yeah, we did it for you guys. Congratulations. It was all for you.
Well, think about how many times, though, we'd have moments where it would start. Because you're right, Joy. In any normal world, someone would have gone, hi, sweet girl, I think you're in an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
Hi, sweet girl, I think this dynamic is toxic. Hi, your boss is a sexual predator. Like, nobody was doing that for us. And
Ding dong. Hey, knock knock. I have some information for you.
And the people who were the perpetrators were like, this is great fuel for your acting.
Oh my God.
So I don't know. It's like, yeah, of course we were all fucking nuts.
Can you imagine if the SAG representative had, like, guys, we have a
Come to
union
our
rep
set?
for Screen Actors
no.
Guild, the SAG rep. Can you imagine if the SAG rep had come to set like, hey, sweet girl, you're in a toxic
We would have been like,
situation.
get the fuck out of here.
Who are you?
We were like a group of feral cats. But I don't know. I think it is so interesting. And Joy, I remember, I don't know if you remember this, a couple years ago, you and I were having a talk about some of these parallels we were experiencing at the time. And we both were like, isn't it weird? Like, do you feel like emotionally you're 10 years younger than you are? And you were like, yeah. And I remember us being like, we're 30, but I think we're really 20 because for all of our 20s, they trapped us.
Yeah, we missed out. I totally missed out on my 20s. I'm like the youngest 40-year-old I know.
100%.
Well, besides you. Besides you guys.
But like we, in a way, are emotionally 10 years younger than our age because we were frozen in this weird high school time capsule. And it was only after we got out of it that we started like doing the growth for all those years that we had put on hold because we were told and we cared. It was like, well, I can't screw this up. I can't bring my personal life anywhere with me. I have to do the job. I don't want to let the fans down. I want the fans to love this. I want we had all this thing for each other, for our crew, for our audience. And man, I remember when we all started going to therapy and we were like, shit, we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah. So there's a lot to fix and needs to. Somebody give me a toolkit quick.
Wow, it seems as though I have to run you through a very large set of chapters.
Well,
you know what? That's the worst part about finding a therapist is that you have there's so much to lug in there and like open up all these suitcases.
You don't just bring them a box
time.
set. You just need to like bring them a box set, Joy. Do you have a DVD player? Can I hook you
Yeah, and
up?
sign the DVD that has your face on it, like we've always have.
Can you imagine being a therapist and having an actor as your patient? Just
die.
like, guys, I can't. It's too much. There's speaking of therapy, there's some serious mommy issues in this episode. Because Lucas, probably more than ever, like needs his mother. You know, he's taking ownership of this awful thing that's happened, as kids do. Right? If your parents get divorced, if something bad happens at home, if you fail in some capacity, it's all on you when you're a teenager. And Lucas is blaming himself for Keith running into that building. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that rather than be like, Lucas, what are you talking about? You know, exactly what Haley says to him. Karen's like, yeah, this is on you, kid. I mean, that was bananas.
That was wild.
Do you think it was realistic?
Well, here's what I will say. What I noticed watching it back that I didn't catch when we did it is that she snaps when she finds out that first he ran into the fire to get Dan.
Mm-hmm.
And like literally he ran into a burning building. He could have died.
Yeah.
And then he ran into a metaphorically burning building again. And,
yeah, it feels more
thought,
like she was using that as a tool to...
Yeah, I thought what Moira did beautifully and in the hands of someone who isn't as thoughtful and communicative as her, it might have failed. What I caught this time when she was yelling at him about being selfish is, I could have lost you. I could have lost you. I lost Keith. I can't lose. I just the losing has to stop. And it was brutal. And by the way, because drama, like that's how we get TV series drama. Like I doubt a mom would do that, but she made it work.
Moms are tricky creatures, man.
You know what? As soon as I said it, I was like, that's tropey. That's not true. They're just as tricky as everyone else.
Moms are worse. We're all nuts.
It would be hard to see a mom do that, but Moira did something with it.
Yeah,
that I caught this time that I hadn't caught before, that I thought was beautiful.
That is so tough. It's so hard to be in a situation where it's truly yourself. It's you or your child.
Oof.
And I agree with you. I think it was necessary in a way that he needed that wake up call, that he was, I don't know. Like, if you're a heroic person, if that's built into you, there are people who run into burning buildings and that's their makeup. That's who they are.
Yeah, but they usually do it with like gear and oxygen masks on, Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of a mother's point, right? It's like, it is a little bit of it's a TV heroism. It's like, oh, you think you can just run in there. You're not thinking about the reality. And it feels to me like she's so broken by the reality of it, and she wants him to have a dose of reality, and as often happens in moments of extreme trauma or stress, it all comes out sideways. Like it gets dumped on him in a way that is heartbreaking.
That was awful to watch.
Oh, awful. Yeah. But like you see why the writers did it, right? Sometimes I think when I see something that makes me so uncomfortable, I'm like, why did the writers do that? I have to find some logic, otherwise I'm going to throw up from the stress.
Well, it's like when your kid's little and they run out in the street, and you've got to have a big reaction, right?
Yeah.
If you're just like, baby, don't do that, they'll do it again. But if you're like, don't you ever, And so it was almost like a reaction to a toddler. Right? Where they don't understand words yet. They understand energy. And so her energy has to frighten him. So he stops this pattern of heroism. But the thing that's missing here is that in my experience, in kind of parenting, you've got good cop and bad cop. I'm always bad cop. My husband's always good cop. That's how it's always going to be. And Keith was historically good cop.
Good cop.
Yeah.
And good cop's gone to talk bad cop off the ledge. Do you know, like, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. I have to be both. I have to be good cop and bad cop at the same time.
I don't wish it on anybody, baby.
But, we had, I won't go into too many details, but we had a death of a family pet that was very dear and beloved, and it was not a natural death. And in my estimation, in the moment, it was my daughter's fault.
Oh no!
And she, you know, in the moment, looks up to me over our dying animal, and stares at me in the eyes with giant tears in her eyes, and she says, "Is this my fault?" And I'm looking at her, and everything inside of me wants to scream, yes, this is, of course, this is your fault. And it was like, you are faced with these moments, and I'm sure you've had some as well, Hilarie, in your life, where you're faced with these moments of like, I am going to, this will stay with her forever.
Yeah.
If my answer is yes. The answer is no, it's not your fault. And then later we can talk about, once the grieving is over and life is a little bit back to normal, we can have conversations about responsibility, and, you know, her own conscience will do its work. I don't need to jump on the bandwagon. But it was like everything stopped. Everything slowed down, time froze. And I was like, I have to make this impossible choice, because this was a deep, deep, deep loss to me. And I have to put myself and my need for vengeance and justice aside and do what is best for her right now. And it was one of the hardest things I've had to do in a split second. It was really hard. But I felt that when I was watching Karen, and I agree with you that she was using that as a tool that he needed in that moment. But it's so hard to watch. It's so hard as a mom. You gotta make those calls sometimes.
You saying that thing about good cop being gone also made me flashback to her breaking down, picking up the adoption paperwork at Keith's apartment. Mm-hmm. Because in a way she realizes, like, this was my best guy. This is my good person. And that's where she loses it. And I in a way now, hearing you say that makes me think that was probably part of what was resonating for Moira in her backstory of, it's because missing this is why I screamed at my kid. Missing this is why I did it wrong. And oh God, that guts me.
Yeah. Well, and also there's a part of me that just loves that, like, once Lucas is not in his mother's good graces anymore, he's like, yeah, Brooke, sleep in my bed. This is going to be awesome. No rules anymore. You know, like,
jeez.
Do you know what I mean? Like, teenagers are so messy. And I guess we did that better than anybody. We were like, we're like pig pens. We're just going to make the biggest mess possible. Can you imagine if Karen had come into his room after just like reading him the riot act and find Brooke in his room? Have you guys been drinking at a party? What are you?
She would have given up. I think she would have just walked out. Like, I give up. I don't even have the energy.
She's like, I'm moving to Delaware. I'm done with you. Get out. Whitey's story was really sad.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. Oh my gosh, that broke my heart.
It was gorgeous. And Barry walking in with the mug from his desk. Mm-hmm. And Lucas thinks he's in so much trouble, and then Whitey just pours himself a beer out of the keg. Gorgeous.
I'm not even here.
Oh, that was another moment of levity that we needed. I loved that.
And Lucas needed that. It's life. Look, you have to do. What did he say? It was something about honoring who
he said.
Did you write it down?
Yeah, I wrote it down. He said,
honor who Keith was.
He said, be the man Keith taught you to be. Anything less will make this a much greater tragedy than it already is.
Yes.
Oh.
So he puts on the suit and goes to Jimmy's funeral.
Mm-hmm. It's what Keith would have wanted.
Whoa. That's intense.
Antoine did such a good job of carrying the emotional load of having that talk with Lucas. Because really, everyone else in Lucas's life is kind of, I don't know, transferring their own feelings. Like Brooke is like, I'm insecure about this, you know? And Peyton's like, I love you. I don't love you. I don't care. Anyway, moving on. You know,
and Mouth is holding on to it just internally.
Karen's flipping the fuck out on him. Whitey's talking about his dead wife. Nathan and Haley are like, we're here for you, but we're also like bonding and like doing our own thing. And so there's all this transference. And the person that comes in and is just really steady with Lucas and rational and is listening is Skills. And those River Court boys were my favorite part of this episode. You know, like seeing them all in the car together, seeing that childhood bond.
Oh, I loved that.
You guys, that is the thing that made me choke up, because my son and his friends, like, you watch these kids grow up. You know, Jimmy Edwards' mom standing there surrounded by these boys.
Oh, it got me. It really did.
Gus has gone to school with the same kids since preschool. And I'm watching them all like kind of change now. And like some of them are jocks. And some of them are theater nerds. And some of them are just like totally weird. And some of them are really into TikTok. And, you know, like they're all different people. And the idea of them all being like 16, 17 years old and showing up in such a responsible way. It's... Yeah.
That kind of forgiveness is amazing.
It was beautiful.
Amazing.
And there was really something too. I need a parachute out of this emotion, so I'm going to get technical for a second.
Get tech.
There were some really weird choices in this episode. Like the split screens felt
We
really
didn't like that.
80s soap opera. It was like, what is happening? Whose show is
Yeah.
this? What are we doing? And then the end, when Lucas says to Karen, it's what Keith would have wanted. And the next shot is that slow pan up Keith's car and that beautiful pullback to reveal all the boys.
Yeah.
And all those boys were really in the moment. You could see the thoughts on their faces. They're not saying anything, but it's so honest. And then the slow-mo, the like Reservoir Dogs shot of them all in suits walking up the hill. I was like, that's what our show does well. It was... They had gone a little too far in trying to communicate some things, and then they just let watching people feel feelings be the device.
Yes.
And there was something so metaphorically beautiful about like them being in his car. Like Keith is the reason they went. He carried them to Jimmy's mom. Like, oh God.
Watching
really
people feel
got me.
feelings. Can we just put that as the synopsis of our show forever? Like that,
Yeah.
when we try to do more, it's, you know, gimmicky and weird, but watching people feel feelings, that's literally it. That's the good part
That's
of the
what we
show.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about Dan in the cemetery? That was really interesting to me. I thought he did a really nice job with that, but it was just such a, I don't know, it was interesting to watch somebody continue to double down. I mean, once you make choices that far and like that, there's just no other, I don't know how you get out of it. I don't know how you climb out of that. We've just watched him in a steady decline into hell, madness. And
I will say
know.
that's also got to be pretty wild as an actor. You're 3 years into your show, you know your character, and then you get a script and you're like freaking out in a cemetery, yelling at ghosts. Boo, okay. And Paul committed. Like he just was like,
He
"All right,
did.
you want to see me do it? Watch me. I'm going to do it."
Watch me.
And he really like, he looked manic in his eyes, and it was a side of him that we hadn't seen. And I love when you see somebody really commit. It's refreshing.
something's got to happen to you after you kill someone.
Oh, I can't even.
You guys,
You know what I mean?
we were just talking about this before the episode started. Like all this stuff that I'm covering for the Sundance series that I do, which is all about awful shit. Murderers.
Yeah.
You know, people who put innocent people in jail. Like the worst things you can do as a human. And when we shot this show, I thought it was so far-fetched. I was just like, guys, this does not happen. And I'm literally making a TV show right now about this happening everywhere. And when people do something awful, they double down. It is so rare for someone to admit,
It's human nature.
The double down is so scary to me because I just didn't think that was the human default. And it is.
Yeah.
And you'll see like people that we trust, like judges, prosecutors, cops, like all these people that we should be trusting, preachers. Oh my God, so many preachers this year. So a Dan Scott in a small town is just another
Not
Tuesday.
far-fetched at all.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say when you were saying that. I was like, and how crazy is it when you see it on like a grand scale? Like a politician does something insane, an act of war happens, and they double down.
Double down's weird.
Like we're watching it happen in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Everyone in the world is like, what is Russia doing? And they just keep going. And you're like, okay, so y'all want to double down so hard that we're like, people are fighting with bombs around nuclear reactors? Nobody's going to say maybe this was a bad idea because it starts because that's
the
it.
small stuff. It starts with the small stuff.
small
All
stuff?
the things that we normally do. I do it. You do it. We all do it. We all do the double down. We all do we feel the moment of threat. And it's like, it takes a lot of courage and intentionality and humility to stop yourself in your tracks and say, shit, I messed up. I don't want to continue down this road. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to you and you and you. I'm turning around. I'm going the other direction. That is, what's the word I'm looking
It's
for?
what the therapy's for,
it's
Joy.
subhuman. It's like, that's beyond what we are, naturally inclined to do. And so, it starts in all the small moments for sure.
Yeah, it is wild to watch that. And, talking, Hill, to you about your documentary show and these cases, it's given me that same feeling watching our show back. Like watching the Dan of it all.
There's Dan
watching
Scotts
the insanity.
everywhere. They're everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Isn't that so
Everywhere.
scary to figure out as a grown-up? As a kid, I would have never bought it.
No.
And as a grown-up, it's just like,
Well, it's one of the things that makes it easy to get taken advantage of when you're young because you don't want to live life. You don't want to walk around looking at the world with cynicism and assuming that people are going to take advantage of you. And it's hard. That's one of the big, hard lessons in life is that there are a lot of Dan Scotts in the world. There are a lot of people who are totally willing, more than willing, to take advantage of you if you don't see it, if you let them. So it's really, that's been a hard balance for me. And I don't know what you guys' journey has been through. I mean, I know a little bit, but it's hard to how do I go through life continuing to believe the best about people and yet be wise enough to recognize and discern when someone is not out for my best interests, when they're just really looking out for themselves.
Well, that's why. So Joy, remember years ago when we started talking about getting tattoos on our feet? That's why when after my particularly shitty season 3 year, I got, and my tattoos are white because I just can't sit in the makeup chair and give them.
You're like, I'm not going to cover them.
I'm like, I refuse. I know they're there. I can see them.
Do you know
but
what I do for a living?
It is so horrible. But that's why in that, like in the philosophy of Eastern tradition that teaches you about balance, walking the middle path. My literal goal after having been a blindsided optimist, and now I think I would, after being battle tested, I'd probably call myself a battered optimist, but I want to hold on to it really bad. That's why I put 2 of the principles of that balance, compassion and wisdom, on the insides of my feet, and they touch every day. The idea that you have to be wise enough to not let your heart be taken advantage of, but have a compassionate heart that isn't so wise that it's cynical.
Yeah.
And
it's
that,
like, what is that wise as a serpent, innocent as a dove, right?
I still don't know. I still don't know. I put that ink in my feet. It was the worst pain I've ever been in my life.
Ooh. Oh, God.
17 years ago or whatever that was. And it's still, I ask myself that question all the time. Because you don't want to be suspicious.
No.
But then you go through a betrayal from a partner or from someone who you called a best friend. And you go, oh, you used me as a stepping stone, or, oh, you used me to bolster your reputation or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you go, fuck, I don't want to think everybody's as bad as you, but if somebody I loved as much as you could be this bad.
Well, Mouth is living that in this moment, right? We have loved the Mouth and Rachel trajectory, right?
That
and
is
if you
a
want to
good
talk about
callback.
bad guys doubling down, Rachel's doing the exact opposite of that. Rachel is saying, hey,
She does it.
I messed up.
She owns it.
Yeah. She owns it.
That was a really interesting scene. You guys want to cruise through that one? Which starts
I
off
do.
with Daniil's midriff. Oh
For
my
so
God.
long, they just held her cute
So long.
stomach in the shot over Lee's face.
Yeah, that was stuff going on behind the scenes. And again, to our exhaustion, it felt like every episode, things were escalating behind the scenes in a way that was really hard. And to watch it back now, I remember just Daniil always kind of being an object, which was really frustrating because she was carrying emotional weight in this episode. She's like there with Brooke. She's confessing to Mouth. She had like hard work to do. And we start
She's quite capable as well. I mean, she's handling it well. If they'd spent more time on her eyes and paying attention to what she was actually thinking, because Daniil is someone who's always thinking, which as an actress is so interesting to watch. And if they had spent any time really allowing her, just settling and allowing her to just think, and you would be fascinated. But she still carries it. She still carries so much of this emotion really well. And I love that you called that. She did. She did the opposite of the double down. She let it out because she didn't want to turn into the kind of person that just continues to find excuses for why she deserves to do what she wants.
Yeah.
I love that.
What'd you think about Mouth's speech? What'd you think about Mouth's speech? What'd you think about Mouth's?
Lee Norris is the unsung hero of the last two episodes in a way, because he's carrying so much silently. He had not many lines. I mean, he did have a little speech, but most of the time when the camera was on him, it was just pushing in on him feeling or watching someone feel their feelings. That's just so complicated. My God. How do you wrestle through that? And the way that he carried the emotions that so many of us were feeling as audience members of loving this character and then watching a beloved character kill another. Well, he didn't, but everybody thinks that he did. But watching a beloved character be seen in a misunderstood light. Help me. I'm struggling.
No, I mean,
you know what I'm trying to say?
The whole world thinks that Jimmy Edwards killed Keith, And so that's the reality in their world, even though it's not true. To know that someone you love died, but to have them die dishonorably is really difficult.
To have them be stolen from you.
Yeah.
That's a theft.
Yeah.
Someone being murdered is a theft from your life. Someone dying in an accident feels like a theft from your life. And those River Court boys especially are carrying so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that Skills was a voice of reason saying he was sick. What he didn't say was if our friend did this, he was sick. But it was communicated on Antoine's face and in the way he spoke, saying he was sick. And that scene between
that's a compassion
Skills
that you're
and
talking
Lucas.
about.
Yeah, it was the first moment where you saw them wrestling with, we loved this person and this person we loved did something hateful. As they know currently, as they believe that Jimmy killed Keith.
Yeah.
A person who we love did something we hate. And how do we reconcile that? And that's a profound question that many of us have to ask, living in the world.
That's hard for grown-ups to ask, let alone 16-year-old boys, They don't have the tools. I like that Skills was the voice of reason for that. And Mouth. And you can see the parents in the room. The actress who played Jimmy's mom, was a very good actress. She didn't get dialogue. And she is someone who was a character actress in the Wilmington area for a really long time. Yeah, she was wonderful. I don't know. It's just such a heavy subject matter. There's a part of me that's just like, okay, let's like get past. I feel that kind of immature energy of let's get past it. And the thing that pulled me out of it in this episode, you know what I'm going to say. In the scene where where Haley and Nathan are slow dancing in the hallway, it pulls out and I see my fucking brother making out with some chick as a background extra. And we're sitting there watching this like beautiful scene between Joy and James. And they're just like saying all the things that we need to hear. And all I see is my brother with mutton chops, sucking face with some chick.
Like,
and
that was a full mac.
It was a real
They were like
makeout.
macking.
It was
That was a proper snog.
disgusting. Don't make TV with your family members. It's gross. It's just gross. You know what? I feel like that was probably payback for him having to see me like make out with Greenberg and Chad and James.
With every boy on the
Pete
show.
Wentz and who else did I get?
Oh yeah, you had a
boy.
Pete Wentz makeout in this episode, although he obviously
Kind
wasn't
of.
there because we never
Invisibly.
saw him.
Deeply inappropriate. But also, like, what a sweet dude. And Larry just references it. It's just like, you know, he shouldn't be picking up my teenage daughter, but have fun in that limo. Like, what?
What?
Yeah.
She got
Pete,
shot.
I need to ask him so many questions about this. You know, Pete is in like an overlapping circle with like some of my closest friends. So there's many a game night or like a football game that I see him at our mutual friend's house, and he's so lovely, and his sweet wife is so lovely. Like,
He's a
they're
sweet
just
dude.
so great. And I'm like, man, next time I see him, I gotta be like, did you feel like a creep? Was it weird?
No,
Hopefully
because you
not.
know the record label was like, this is going to be awesome, and it's going to
So
like
cool for the band,
cool,
man.
Yeah.
cool.
Well, and we are all actually
The same age.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I don't think anybody clocked it at the
I don't
time
think
because we
anybody
are all the
clocked
same
it.
age. Yeah.
We needed that time jump.
Abby wants to know if we think the writers regretted killing off Keith because they never stopped bringing him up the rest of the series.
I mean,
Yes. I bet they did. I'm not sure. I don't remember
Guys,
exactly
it was
why
all
they-
money. It was just money, control,
Always
control,
Yeah.
control. You know, he was one of the highest paid actors on the show when we signed on to do the pilot because he was a known entity. And if you notice, all of a sudden the grown-ups start dropping like flies or disappearing because that money is not being redistributed, but it's just being spent differently. And so they made a financial decision.
well, and look, I mean,
executive decision.
you know, for many of us, like, this was our first job. They didn't have to pay us much.
No.
And having a bunch of younger actors who were making low wages in our industry versus a bunch of older actors with like quotes and credits who were being paid what they were worth, you know, the less money they could pay to those actors, the more money the producers and people could keep for themselves.
Well, and the whole mythology too. Remember so the networks we were on, WB and CW, were just like, we're young kids. We're young, we're young adults. It was the young adult channel. All the other networks had sitcoms that catered towards adults. We were young adult. And so with the CW, with like them changing their whole deal in the last month, did you see that data that got tweeted out? That the average age of a CW viewer is 58 years old. It was like 56 or 58 years old. And everyone on social media was like, that's crazy. And we're sitting here watching these episodes back, and I'm like, it's not crazy at all. Do you know how much comfort I find as a woman in the 40s?
The nostalgia.
Yes.
Watching teenagers? It's thrilling.
Well, that's the thing. It's nostalgia TV. And you know what I will say? Something else that's interesting, and I feel like this is out in the world right now, too. There's some things happening in the television landscape. And people are talking about how a lot of studios and a lot of very powerful producers like to treat their actors like they are expendable.
Oh, yes. I know what you're talking
some
about.
of them said it as like a policy where they're like, I want the actors to know they're expendable. And then what happens is you try to make one of them the scapegoat, like our bosses did with Craig. They said, well, we're going to kill off Craig Sheffer and that'll scare the rest of the actors. And you know what happens? The fans never stop talking about the actor who they made expendable. So then they can never stop talking about the actor who they made expendable.
Yeah.
And they learn their lesson. It is a nice slice of humble pie for people who, treat people like product instead of like people. So I think, I think they regretted it. I think they had to eat it every day for the next 6 years.
Here's your slice of Uncle Keith pie.
Yes.
Yeah. And
That's
as one
right.
of the three
I'm on
people on
board.
this show who missed Craig dearly,
Yeah.
I'm thrilled that you guys helped us make them eat it every single damn day.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you to our wonderful fans.
Are we going to spin a wheel? Spin the wheel.
Most likely to.
To eat something off the ground?
Eat something off the ground.
Probably me.
Shut up.
Depends on what the ground is.
Yeah, it depends on what the ground is, but I'm a pretty big proponent of a 5-second rule. I'm like, listen, dirt is good for your immune system. I don't know what you want from me.
I'm kind of the same.
As long as the something in question isn't soggy.
Or has dog hair on it, because I can't handle if there's if it falls
God,
and
you guys
something's
are gonna
on it.
My gag reflex is so bad. We can't even talk about this.
I just look, I've dropped I don't know. Just as long as it's not soggy. No, I'm not going to eat ice cream off the ground, but
Sophia's
most
Thanksgiving roast
Yeah.
is now suspicious.
I don't know.
It's so yuck. Wait, but what character do we think is the one?
Oh.
I think that's probably something they would have made Junk do, and Cullen would have made it so funny.
Yeah.
That's a good call. Oh, yeah.
He would have really gotten into it in a way that nobody else would and made it real funny.
I love it.
I'm down for that.
I love it. All right, you guys, what is happening next episode? It's episode 18, When It Isn't Like It Should Be. That doesn't sound hopeful. That sounds depressing too.
I think we're going to be sad for a while, you guys.
All right.
It's a good thing we have fun with each other.
It's
Yeah.
true. Get
And
ready
Hilarie,
for more.
Hilarie, give us a cocktail recipe from MF Libations. Give us
Oh,
some,
my
for next
God.
week.
Yeah, we need a cocktail.
Okay, I'll
'Cause
come with a drink next week,
Great.
you guys. Listen.
We're going to make drinks and we'll probably talk lots more about the camera moves because it helps us not cry. You're like, you know what the DP did in that scene. Give me a tissue.
Tech talk. This is tech talk. All right, I love you guys. Hopefully my brother's not kissing anyone next
Oh,
week.
God. I hope so.
You guys are the best. I love you. I'm glad we're getting through it
Love
together.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening.
Don't forget to leave us a review. You can also follow us on Instagram at Drama Queens OTH.
Or email us at dramaqueens@iheartradio.com. See you next time.
We're all about that high school drama girl, all about them high school queens. We'll take you for a ride in our comic girl, cheering for the right team. Drama queens, smart girl, rough girl, fashion but you're tough girl. You could sit with us, girl. Drama queens, drama queens, drama queens, drama queens, drama queens.